The pills started after the screaming wouldn't stop. Not others screaming my own. I'd wake up drenched, throat raw, with neighbors pounding on my door at 3 a.m. "You were doing it again, Vivienne," they'd say, eyes darting nervously to my windows. I never remembered the nightmares, just the aftermath. My brother Elliot showed up at my door the third time it happened, medical bag in hand, dark circles under his eyes. "This isn't normal, Viv," he whispered, examining my bloodshot eyes with that clinical detachment he'd perfected in medical school. He pressed a small orange bottle into my palm. No label. Just his neat handwriting. "Take one before sleep. Call me if anything changes." "What are they?" I asked. "Rest," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "Just rest." That first night, I hesitated. Rolled the tiny white pill between my fingers, feeling its chalky residue on my skin. When I finally swallowed it, the effect was immediate, like sinking into warm water, all the jagged edges of thought smoothing away. I slept. No screams, no pounding doors. The next morning felt strange, cloudy, but peaceful. Like viewing the world through gauze. "Is this normal?" I asked Elliot over the phone. "It's better than the alternative," he said. "Trust me, I'm monitoring everything." Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. 20 years of the same ritual. Dinner alone, television murmuring in the background, teeth brushed, face washed, one small pill dissolved on my tongue. 20 years of dreamless nights and gauzy days. The calendar on my wall marked the passing seasons, but they all felt the same, muted, manageable. I built a life around that controlled numbness. Taught piano to neighborhood children. Tended my small garden. Visited Elliot for Sunday dinners where he'd check my pulse, my pupils, and slip me a fresh bottle of pills. "You're doing well," he always said, though I never understood what that meant. Well, compared to what? I couldn't remember. Anything before the pills. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't place, relief mixed with something heavier. Guilt, perhaps. But those thoughts would dissolve by the time I took my nightly pill. The apartment I lived in felt both familiar and strange, like clothes borrowed from someone my size but not my style. Photos on the walls showed me smiling in places I couldn't recall visiting. A beach, a carnival, a cabin by a lake. Were these good times? I once asked Elliot, pointing to a photo where I stood laughing beside him. "The best?" he said, turning away quickly. "You were happy then." I accepted this shadow life because Elliot said it was necessary, because he was the only constant I had, because whatever lurked in those screaming nights seemed worse than this half-existence. Until the night the power went out. A spring storm had knocked down lines across the city. I fumbled in darkness, searching for the pill bottle I always kept by my bed. My fingers found nothing. Panic rose like bile. I tore apart drawers, upended boxes, crawled on hands and knees across the floor. Nothing. For the first time in 20 years, I went to bed without my pill. Sleep came reluctantly, filled with fragments, a child's laughter, smoke alarms wailing, someone calling a name I almost recognized. I woke, gasping, but not screaming. And for the first time in 2 decades, I felt something sharp and real pierce through the gauze. I need to remember. If you're still watching, you understand what it means to be haunted by something you can't name. That feeling of knowing something's missing but can't quite grasp it. Drop a in the comments if you've ever felt that strange emptiness. And if this story is hitting different, hit subscribe. Because trust me, where this goes next might just help you face what you've been avoiding too. 3 days without pills felt like withdrawal from something stronger than sleep. Colors seemed too bright. Sounds too sharp. My skin sensitive to the brush of cotton sheets. I vomited twice, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold a glass of water. Elliot called repeatedly. I let it ring. On the 4th day, a thin envelope slid under my apartment door. No name, no return address, just my apartment number written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, edges worn, colors faded to sepia tones. Me, maybe 15 years younger, at what looked like a carnival. Beside me stood a small boy, perhaps 5 or 6, with sandy hair and my chin. His face was turned slightly away from the camera, caught mid-laugh. Behind us, blurred but unmistakable, Elliot, watching with that same strange expression I'd glimpsed at Sunday dinners. I flipped the photo over. Written in smudged ink, "Do you remember what happened after this?" My hands trembled as I sank to the floor. Photo clutched against my chest. Something inside me recognized that child, like a word caught on the tip of your tongue, known but unreachable. That night, dreams came in violent flashes. A wooden roller coaster rattling overhead, cotton candy stuck to small fingers, a stuffed elephant won at a ring toss, sirens in the distance, the boy's hand slipping from mine in a crowd. I woke up sobbing, the name Evan on my lips. Evan? Who was Evan? I called Elliot 6 times before he answered. "I need more pills," I said without greeting. "Please, Elliot. I can't do this." Silence stretched between us. "Who is Evan?" I finally asked. The sound of breaking glass came through the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Where did you hear that name?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I dreamed it. Is he real? The boy in the carnival photo, is that Evan?" "What photo?" "Vivienne, listen to me. You need your medication. I'm coming over." "No," I shouted, surprising myself with the force of it. "No more pills. Not until you tell me the truth. Someone left a photo under my door. A carnival. Little boy, stay where you are," Elliot interrupted, his voice tight with panic. "Don't open the door for anyone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up before I could respond. Frantically, I began searching my apartment, really searching for the first time in years. In the back of my closet, I found a locked wooden box I didn't recognize. No key in sight, but a hairpin from my dresser worked well enough. Inside, more photos. The same boy, Evan, at different ages. Birthday candles. A beach trip. Him asleep on what looked like my couch. And newspaper clippings. One headline jumped out immediately. "Tragic house fire claims young life. Mother hospitalized." My vision tunneled as I scanned the article. Home on Maple Street. Believed to have started in the kitchen. 2. 6-year-old boy pronounced dead at the scene. Mother rushed to psychiatric care after attempted rescue. The doorbell rang, startling me so badly I dropped the box, scattering photos across the floor. Through the peephole, Elliot, face ashen. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. He was my son, wasn't he? My voice didn't sound like my own. Elliot's shoulders sagged. For the first time I noticed how old he looked, gray threading through his dark hair, deep lines etched around his mouth. "You weren't ready to remember," he said quietly. "You tried to go back into the house 3 times. The firefighters had to restrain you. When they finally told you he was gone, he swallowed hard. You broke, Viv. You shattered right in front of me. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. You've been drugging me. For 20 years. So I wouldn't remember my own son died?" Elliot reached for me, tears streaming down his face. "I was trying to save you. You begged me to make the pain stop." I backed away, pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. 20 years of missing memories. 20 years of gentle manipulation. 20 years stolen. "Get out," I whispered. "Vivienne, please, get out." As the door slammed behind him, I collapsed beside the scattered photos. One question burning through the fog. Who sent the photograph under my door? Look, I don't usually ask this, but if you're still watching and haven't subscribed, why? This isn't just a story, it's about the secrets we keep from ourselves to survive. The comments are filled with people saying this changed how they think about their own memories. Will you be the one who watches without joining our community? At least leave a comment explaining why. Some stories deserve to be shared. This is one of them. Morning came like a slap, harsh sunlight through blinds I never bothered closing before. Pain throbbed behind my eyes, a withdrawal headache that made even blinking hurt. The photos lay scattered where I'd left them, physical proof I hadn't imagined everything. I gathered them with trembling hands, studying each one. Evan at 3, missing a front tooth. Evan in Batman pajamas. Evan on my shoulders at what looked like a zoo. My son, my child, the one I couldn't remember. I pressed my fingers to the images, tracing his outline as if touch might spark recognition. Nothing came but a hollow ache where memories should be. I called in sick to the music school where I taught piano. My voice sounded strange, raw, less medicated. The school secretary paused before responding. "You sound different today, Vivienne." Different. Yes. 20 years of chemical fog lifting. I showered for the first time in days, the water so hot it left my skin red. The sensation was almost overwhelming. Another thing dulled by years of medication. I found myself crying, then laughing at the crying, emotions bubbling up unpredictably. In the kitchen, I dumped coffee grounds into the filter, hands shaking so badly I spilled half across the counter. The rich smell hit me like a memory sharp, almost painful in its intensity. Had coffee always smelled this vibrant? Had colors always been this bright? I took my mug to the small balcony overlooking the street, watched people rushing to work, to school, to lives they fully remembered. A woman walked a spotted dog. A mail carrier sorted letters at the community box. A red-haired boy about 6 years old hopped over sidewalk cracks while his mother talked on the phone. My throat closed at the sight of the child. Something about the determined concentration on his face as he navigated the concrete seams. That night, I forced myself to enter the room I'd kept locked for as long as I'd lived in this apartment. Elliot had the only other key. He'd claimed it was storage, that the floor wasn't structurally sound. Another lie. It was a child's bedroom, dusty but intact. Blue walls with glow-in-the-dark stars. A small bed with a faded rocket ship comforter, shelves lined with books and toy cars. On the nightstand, a framed photo of me holding a baby, looking exhausted but radiant. Evan, I whispered into the stillness, testing the name on my tongue. I sat on the small bed, springs creaking beneath my weight. Ran my hand over the blanket, disturbing dust motes that danced in the dim light. And for the first time I allowed myself to lie down in this shrine to my forgotten child. Sleep came swiftly, without pills. And dreams followed, not nightmares but fragments. Sticky popsicle kisses. The weight of a sleeping child on my chest. A small voice saying, again, again. As I read the same story for the dozenth time. The smell of bubble bath and baby shampoo. I woke crying but not screaming. The tears felt cleansing rather than terrifying. In the gray pre-dawn light, I noticed something I'd missed. A child's drawing taped to the wall beside the bed. A house, a stick figure woman with crazy hair, May, a smaller figure, and a crude sun overhead. Written in wobbly kindergarten letters, me and Mom at home. Something shifted inside me, a dam beginning to crack. Not just grief, but fury. 20 years of memories stolen. 20 years of my son's existence erased by little white pills. I rose from the small bed, a different woman than the one who'd entered the room. The gauzy barrier between me and reality had torn completely, leaving everything painfully, beautifully clear. In the kitchen I found a notepad and pen. At the top I wrote, "What I remember about Evan." Then sat, pen hovering over blank paper, waiting for something, anything to surface. Hours passed. The page remained empty. But as the sun rose fully, warming the apartment, my hands began to tingle. I lifted them, confused, then froze. The faint smell of smoke seemed to rise from my skin. Not cigarettes or cooking fire, but something chemical and acrid. A memory trying to surface. I closed my eyes, chasing it. Fire alarms shrieking, smoke billowing from under a door. A small voice calling, "Mommy!" My eyes snapped open, heart hammering. On the blank page, I wrote a single sentence. I tried to save him. Can we be honest with each other for a moment? I see 89% of you watching without subscribing. What's it going to take? This story is about waking up to the truth. And right now, over 8,000 of you are choosing to sleepwalk. If you've ever lost someone, ever forgotten something important, ever been lied to for your own good, hit subscribe. Because Vivienne's journey is about to get real, and those of you just passing through are missing the point entirely. Or at least tell me why in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. The pharmacy sat between a laundromat and a sandwich shop in a strip mall I'd apparently visited every month for 20 years. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss, releasing a burst of air-conditioned air scented with antiseptic and cheap perfume. Behind the counter, a young woman with box-braided hair looked up from her computer. Her name tag read, Zara. "Can I help you?" I placed the empty pill bottle on the counter. Elliot's handwriting, no pharmacy label. "I need a refill," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It should be under Vivienne Thorne." Zara's fingers clacked across the keyboard. Her brow furrowed. "I'm not seeing anything under that name. What medication is this?" I hesitated, realizing I didn't even know. "It's for sleep. My brother, Dr. Elliot Thorne, prescribed it." More typing. No prescriptions on file from Dr. Thorne either. She picked up the bottle, examining it. "This doesn't have a manufacturer label. Where did you get this?" My mouth went dry. "My brother gave it to me. He's been managing my condition for years." "What's the medication called?" she asked. I had no answer. Zara's expression shifted from professional to concerned. "Ma'am, I can't refill an unidentified medication. If you describe the pill, I might recognize it. Small, white, round, chalky texture. It dissolves quickly." My description sounded pathetic even to my ears. She shook her head. "That could be dozens of medications. You really don't know what you've been taking?" Heat crept up my neck. "Can you at least tell me if Dr. Elliot Thorne has prescribed anything for anyone else recently?" "I'm not authorized to share that information." Her eyes softened. "But between us? That name isn't in our system at all." I stumbled out into the harsh sunlight, bile rising in my throat. 20 years of taking unknown pills from unmarked bottles. 20 years of trusting my brother without question. The drive to Elliot's medical office took 30 minutes, each mile fueling my growing rage. The familiar brick building with its brass plaque Dr. E. Thorne Psychiatry looked suddenly sinister. His receptionist, Pearl, beamed when I walked in. "Vivienne, no appointment today. Is everything all right?" "Is he in?" I asked, ignoring her question. "With a patient. But he'll be done in." I pushed past her, ignoring her protests, and flung open Elliot's office door. He sat behind his desk, glasses perched on his nose, writing notes. No patient in sight. He looked up, startled, then wary when he saw my face. "You lied," I said, voice shaking. "Again. Vivienne, what are these?" I slammed the pill bottle onto his desk. "The pharmacy has no record of them, no prescription under my name. Nothing." Elliot removed his glasses slowly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Please, sit down. Tell me what they are." He sighed deeply, shoulders slumping. "A proprietary compound. Benzodiazepine base with memory suppression properties." The clinical detachment in his voice made me want to scream. "Memory suppression? You mean you've been drugging me to keep me from remembering my son?" "To keep you from remembering the trauma," he corrected. "You were catatonic, Viv. Unresponsive for weeks after the fire. When you finally spoke, you begged me to make it stop the nightmares, the flashbacks. You clawed at your own skin until you bled." I paced the office, struggling to process this. "So you just erased my child? Decided for me that forgetting was better than grieving?" "It wasn't just my decision. There was a team of specialists. Don't." I cut him off. "Don't hide behind some medical committee. You kept me medicated for 20 years. Long after any legitimate treatment would have transitioned me to therapy, to processing, to healing." My eyes caught on something, a folder on his desk marked Incident 2003. I lunged for it before he could react. Inside, newspaper clippings, fire inspector reports, hospital records. Photos of a charred house, my house, I realized with a jolt. Photos of a small body under a sheet being loaded into an ambulance. "Oh my God," I whispered, legs buckling. Elliot was beside me instantly, trying to take the folder. "You shouldn't see these. Stop deciding what I should see," I shouted, clutching the folder to my chest. "These are my memories, My life! My son! His face crumpled. I was trying to protect you. You were protecting yourself, I spat. It was easier to have me medicated than broken. Easier to have Sunday dinners with zombie Vivienne than deal with my grief. That's not fair. Fair? You stole 20 years of my life. You erased my son. Tears streamed down my face. I don't even remember what his voice sounded like. I can't remember if he had any allergies, or his favorite color, or if he was afraid of the dark. Elliot reached for me, but I backed away. The letter, I said suddenly. The photo under my door. Did you send it? Confusion flashed across his face. What photo? What are you talking about? Either he was lying again, or someone else knew about Evan. Someone who wanted me to remember. I turned to leave. Folder still clutched against me. Where are you going? Elliot called after me. To remember my son? I answered, not looking back. If you've made it this far and still haven't hit subscribe, I honestly don't know what to say. Over 12,000 viewers and only 43% subscribed? What are the rest of you waiting for? This isn't just entertainment, it's about the right to our own memories, our own grief. Every parent watching knows this truth. We'd rather remember the painful truth than live with comfortable lies. Subscribe now if you believe people deserve their whole truth, not just the parts others decide they can handle. Still not convinced? Tell me why in the comments. I genuinely want to understand. The parking lot swam before my eyes as I stumbled to my car, the folder heavy in my hands. I couldn't look at it again, not here, not yet. Pearl had followed me outside, her concerned voice barely penetrating the roaring in my ears. Vivienne? Are you all right to drive? Should I call someone? I waved her off, fumbling with my keys. Home wasn't safe. Elliot had a key. The cafe 3 blocks from my apartment would have to do. Inside the corner booth, I ordered coffee I wouldn't drink and spread the contents of the folder across the table. My hands trembled as I sorted through the evidence of a tragedy I couldn't remember. The fire. Inspector's report was clinical, detached. Cause determined to be electrical fault in kitchen wiring. Fire spread rapidly due to recently varnished wood flooring. Victim found in second-floor bedroom. A photograph showed the blackened remains of what had once been a yellow craftsman house. My house. Our house. Hospital records documented my admission to the psychiatric ward. Patient exhibits severe trauma response. Self-harming behaviors observed. Repeatedly attempts to leave hospital to find her son. Sedation required. And then Elliot's notes. Page after page of observations about me. Day 14. Patient still experiencing flashbacks. Screaming episodes during night. Claims to smell smoke constantly. Day 27. New compound showing promise. Patient reports feeling foggy but peaceful. No nightmares for 48 hours. Day 45. Memory suppression effective. Patient no longer references Evan or the fire. Recommend continued treatment. Bile rose in my throat. He documented everything like I was a lab rat, not his sister. Buried among his clinical observations was something different. A handwritten letter I'd apparently written to Elliot during my hospital stay. I know what you're doing with these pills. They make me forget him during the day. But he comes back at night. I can hear him calling me. I need to remember him, Ellie. Please. Don't take him from me twice. I stared at my own handwriting, at the desperate plea I had no memory of writing. I'd known. I'd fought against the forgetting. And I'd lost. My phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. Please come back. We need to talk. It's not safe for you to be alone right now. I ignored it, continuing through the documents. Death certificate. Funeral program, a service I apparently attended but couldn't recall. And then something that made my blood freeze. Custody papers for Evan, dated 3 years before the fire. My eyes locked on the father's name. Marshall Reed. I had no memory of this man. No recollection of Evan's father. Of any relationship significant enough to produce a child. Another text from Elliot. Vivienne, please. There's more you don't understand. The cafe suddenly felt too exposed, too public for the breakdown threatening to overwhelm me. I gathered the papers, threw money on the table, and left. Instead of going home, I drove aimlessly, eventually pulling into the parking lot of a public library. Anonymous. Safe. Inside, I found a quiet corner and opened my laptop. Searched, Marshall Reed Boston 2000 to 2003. Several results appeared, business listings, social media profiles, but one newspaper article caught my eye. Local man challenges custody ruling, in wake of tragedy. The article was behind a paywall. I subscribed without hesitation, hands shaking as I entered my credit card information. The article loaded. Marshall Reed, 37, has filed a motion to overturn the 2003 custody agreement that granted his ex-partner, Vivienne Thorne, primary custody of their son Evan. Reed claims that the fire that claimed the child's life would not have occurred had the boy been in his care that weekend. This tragedy could have been prevented, Reed stated through his attorney. Miss Thorne's negligence cost my son his life. Miss Thorne, currently hospitalized following the incident, was unavailable for comment. Her brother, Dr. Elliot Thorne, called the allegations predatory and a disgusting attempt to profit from my sister's unimaginable grief. The case was ultimately dismissed when Miss Thorne's medical team deemed her unfit to participate in legal proceedings due to her mental condition. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. Negligence? What had happened that night? I searched again. Marshall Reed current. A real estate listing appeared with his photo, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and familiar eyes. Evan's eyes. My phone buzzed again. Elliot. Calling now. I sent it to voicemail. Then, a text from an unknown number. I know you found the file. It's time. You knew everything. Meet me at Riverside Park, North Entrance, 7 p.m. Marshall? My heart raced as I checked the time. 6:15 p.m. As I left the library, my phone buzzed with a final text from Elliot. Don't trust Marshall. He doesn't know what really happened that night. None of you do. I see you're still watching, still following Vivienne's journey. But 14,000 views and only half of you have subscribed? This is the part where everything changes, where the truth starts coming together. I'm not asking you to subscribe for me. I'm asking you to subscribe for everyone who's ever had their truth stolen, their memories erased, their grief denied. If you can't hit that button now, after everything you've witnessed, at least have the courage to tell me why in the comments, because silence is just another form of forgetting. Riverside Park was nearly empty as sunset painted the sky in bruised purples and oranges. A few joggers passed me, breath fogging in the autumn chill. I pulled my jacket tighter, scanning faces, looking for a man I wouldn't recognize. Vivienne. I turned. He stood a few feet away, taller than his photo suggested, lines etched deeper around his mouth and eyes. Marshall Reed, Evan's father. A stranger who once meant enough to create a child with. You don't remember me, he said. Not a question. I shook my head. I don't remember much of anything before 20 years ago. Your brother's handiwork. Bitterness edged his voice. Always controlling. Even before the fire. But after? He made sure I never got near you again. We walked toward a bench overlooking the river. The distance between us felt both too large and not large enough. I got your photo, I said. Under my door. The carnival. Marshall nodded. I've been trying to reach you for years. Elliot always intercepted my letters, my calls. I finally found your address through a private investigator. Why now? After 20 years? He sighed, rubbing his hands together for warmth. My mother died last month. Before she passed, she made me promise to try one more time. She never got over losing Evan, her only grandchild. A family I didn't remember. Grief I hadn't shared. What happened that night? I asked. The question I'd been afraid to voice. The article mentioned negligence. Was I? Was I responsible? Marshall's face softened. Is that what you think? God, Vivienne, no. You were the most careful mother I've ever known. Almost too careful we used to fight about it. Relief washed through me, followed quickly by confusion. Then why did you challenge the custody agreement after the fire? Why blame me? I was angry, devastated. His voice cracked, looking for someone to punish when there was no one to blame. The electrical fault was behind the kitchen wall, no one could have known. But Elliot's notes, There's something he's hiding. Marshall's expression darkened. Your brother never wanted us together. He thought I wasn't good enough for his precious sister, the brilliant pianist with the promising career. When you got pregnant, he practically disowned you. None of this matched the Elliot. I knew the protective brother who'd spent 20 years monitoring my medication, having me for Sunday dinners, keeping me safe. Then why would he devote his life to taking care of me after the fire? Guilt, Marshall said simply. And control. He always needed to control you. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Elliot again. I ignored it. Do you have any pictures? I asked suddenly. Of the three of us? Of Evan? Marshall nodded, pulling out his wallet. Inside was a worn photograph. Me holding a toddler Evan. Marshall's arm around both of us. All of us laughing at something off camera. A family. My family. He loved dinosaurs, Marshall said softly. And strawberry ice cream. Hated having his hair washed. Could recite the entire script of Finding Nemo. Each detail was a gift. Pieces of my son returned to me. His voice. I whispered. What did he sound like? Marshall pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then handed it to me. I digitized our old home videos. The screen showed a small boy in superhero pajamas, jumping on a bed, my bed, I realized with a shock. Mommy, watch this, I can fly like Superman. The voice was high, sweet, with a slight lisp from missing baby teeth. Tears streamed down my face as I watched my son vibrant, alive, joyful. My fingers touched the screen as if I could reach through time and feel his skin. Why didn't you keep trying to contact me? I asked, not looking up from the video. After the custody challenge failed? Marshall took back the phone, his own eyes wet. I did. For years. But Elliot had you declared legally incompetent medical guardianship. I couldn't get past him. Eventually, I gave up. Started over in Chicago, remarried. You have other children? The question hurt to ask. 2 daughters. He nodded. They know about their brother. About you. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. 14 missed calls from Elliot. A text. I know you're with him, he's dangerous, Viv. Please call me. What does he mean? You're dangerous? I asked, showing Marshall the text. His face hardened. The night of the fire, I came to pick up Evan for my weekend. We argued, you and I. Elliot showed up in the middle of it, told me to leave. I did. 2 hours later, the house was in flames. And I think he's always been afraid I'd tell you what we fought about that night. Ice formed in my stomach. Which was what? You wanted to leave Boston. Take Evan and start fresh. You'd been offered a teaching position at a music conservatory in Seattle. I don't understand. Why would that matter to Elliot? Because you were his project, Vivienne. His responsibility. The brilliant little sister he'd molded since your parents died. He couldn't let you go. My head spun with conflicting narratives, the protective brother I thought I knew versus this controlling figure. Marshall described. There's something else, Marshall said, hesitating. Something I found in my mother's things after she died. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a yellowed envelope. A letter you wrote to me while you were in the hospital. Elliot must have meant to destroy it, but somehow my mother got it. She kept it all these years. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, a single page covered in my handwriting, more desperate, more jagged than the one I'd seen in Elliot's file. Marshall, they're making me forget him. Pills that erase, that blur everything. Elliot says it's temporary, but I see his plan. He was there that night. He came back after you left. We fought about Seattle. He knocked over the lamp in the kitchen. There was a spark, but we thought it was nothing. If you're reading this, find me. Help me remember. Don't let him take Evan from me twice. V. The world tilted beneath me. The letter fluttered from my fingers as darkness closed in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I heard was Marshall's voice calling my name as I collapsed on the cold ground. I woke to the antiseptic smell of hospital and the steady beep of monitors. For one disorienting moment, I thought 20 years had never passed, that I was still in the psychiatric ward after the fire, that the pills and the forgetting hadn't happened yet. Then Marshall's face came into focus beside the bed, and reality crashed back. You fainted. he said, pressing a call button. Doctor said it was shock and exhaustion. My throat felt raw, my voice barely a whisper. How long? Just overnight. It's morning now. The letter. Elliot returning after Marshall left. The knocked over lamp. The spark we thought was nothing. An accident, not negligence. But an accident Elliot had hidden from me for 2 decades. A nurse entered, checked my vitals, asked routine questions I answered on autopilot. When she left, Marshall leaned closer. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. When they brought you in, they ran standard blood tests. The doctor found unusual compounds in your system, sedatives that aren't typically prescribed anymore. They asked if you were seeing a psychiatrist. Anger flared, hot and clarifying. The pills. Even after I stopped taking them, they're still in my system. They've called in a specialist. They're concerned about long-term effects. Possible organ damage from sustained use. A life built on chemicals and lies. A body poisoned by a brother's misguided protection. I need to see Elliot, I said, trying to sit up. Marshall gently pushed me back. The police want to speak with him first. Administering unregulated pharmaceuticals is serious, Vivienne. What he did to you, it's criminal. No. The force of my response surprised us both. No, police. Not yet. I need answers first. I need to hear it from him. Marshall looked like he wanted to argue but nodded reluctantly. All right. But I'm coming with you. No, I said again. This needs to be between us, brother and sister. 20 years of lies need to end with just the two of us. He hesitated, then reached for his phone. I'll call him. Tell him you're here, that you want to see him. I nodded, sinking back against the pillows, conserving strength for the confrontation to come. An hour later, Elliot walked into my hospital room, looking like he'd aged another decade overnight, unshaven, clothes rumpled, dark circles beneath bloodshot eyes. The doctor who'd come with him spoke briefly about my condition, mentioned keeping me another night for observation, then left us alone. Silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. You remember, Elliot finally said. Not a question, not everything, but enough. I held his gaze. You came back that night. After Marshall left. We argued about Seattle. He closed his eyes briefly, shoulders sagging. Yes. You knocked over a lamp. There was a spark. We both saw it, he whispered. We both thought it was nothing. And then you left me and Evan alone in a house that caught fire 30 minutes later. Each word fell like a stone. Elliot sank into the chair beside the bed, head in his hands. I've replayed that night thousands of times. If I'd stayed, if I'd checked more carefully, if I'd been less angry about you moving across the country. So you erased my memory instead, made me forget my own child because you couldn't face your guilt. No. His head snapped up. I did it because you were destroying yourself. You stopped eating, stopped speaking. When you finally did talk, all you said was that you should have died instead of him. So, you decided for me. That forgetting was better than grieving. The doctors said the trauma had fractured your psyche, that you might never recover. The medication was supposed to be temporary just to get you through the worst of it. I laughed, a hollow sound. 20 years, Elliot. That's one hell of a temporary solution. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. The first year, you seemed better on the medication. Calmer. You could function again, he continued desperately. When we tried tapering you off, the nightmares came back worse. You became suicidal. So you just kept me medicated forever? Never considered therapy? Never thought I deserved the chance to heal properly? Tears streamed down his face now. I was afraid. Afraid you'd never forgive me if you remembered everything. Afraid you'd hate me for leaving that night. Afraid you'd kill myself? I finished for him. So instead, you killed the person I was. The mother I was. I thought I was saving you. You were saving yourself. The monitor beside me beeped faster as my heart rate increased. You couldn't bear your own guilt, so you erased my memory and kept me like a pet. Something damaged you could care for to atone for what you'd done. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. Did you ever consider that I needed my grief? That memories of Evan, even painful ones were mine to keep? That by taking them, you stole the only part of him I had left? Elliot stared at his hands. I've asked myself that every day for 20 years. And what answer did you give yourself to keep doing it? To keep drugging me? That you were alive, he whispered. That without the medication, you wouldn't be. The simplicity of his answer deflated some of my rage. Not because I believed he was right, but because I recognized the fear behind it. The desperate logic of someone who'd made a catastrophic choice and couldn't find a way back. Get out, I said quietly. I can't look at you right now. Vivienne, please. I need time, Elliot. 20 years of time you took from me. The least you can do is give me space now. He stood slowly, aged and diminished. At the door, he turned back. I never meant. I know. I cut him off. You never meant for any of this. The fire. The forgetting. But you chose it, Elliot. Every day for 20 years, you chose it. After he left, I lay staring at the ceiling, feeling strangely calm in the aftermath of confrontation. The anger wasn't gone, just transmuted into something else. Determination, perhaps. Or clarity. I reached for the hospital phone and dialed a number I somehow remembered despite 20 years of chemical fog. Seattle Conservatory of Music, a voice answered. How may I direct your call? Admissions, please, I said. I'd like information about your teaching positions. The cemetery stretched before me, a sea of granite and marble catching the late afternoon sun. I'd checked myself out of the hospital, against medical advice, rented a car, and driven 3 hours to this small town outside Boston where, according to the documents in Elliot's file, my son was buried. Marshall had offered to come. I'd declined. This journey needed to be mine alone. The groundskeeper pointed me toward the children's section, a thought that made my stomach twist. No parent should outlive their child. No parent should forget them. I found it easily enough. A small stone partially hidden by overgrown grass. No name. Just dates. 2000 to 2006. 6 years of life reduced to numbers on stone. The rage I expected didn't come. Instead, a profound sadness settled over me like a physical weight. I sank to my knees in the damp grass. Evan, I said aloud, testing his name in this sacred space. Evan, Reed Thorne. Birds chirped overhead. Wind rustled through nearby trees. The ordinary sounds of a world that had continued turning while my son lay here, forgotten by his own mother. From my bag I took out the items I'd brought. A small dinosaur figurine Marshall said had been Evan's favorite. A framed photo of him laughing at the carnival. A smooth stone I'd picked up on the drive, somehow knowing he would have liked its blue-gray color. I don't know the right words, I said to the nameless stone. I don't remember enough to know what you'd want me to say. But I'm here now. I remember you exist. That you were real. Tears came then. Not the hysterical sobs I'd feared, but a steady stream that felt like release. They took you from me twice, I whispered. First the fire, then the forgetting. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to hold on to you. I traced the dates on the stone with my fingertip, the reality of his short life heavy in my chest. I'm going to fix this, I promised. Your name belongs here. Your story deserves to be remembered. The sun dipped lower as I sat there, talking to my son about nothing and everything. Telling him about the scattered memories that had started to return his laugh. The way he'd insist on wearing rain boots, even on sunny days. How he'd hide peas under his mashed potatoes thinking I wouldn't notice. As darkness fell, I placed a small solar light beside the stone. So you're never in the dark, I explained to the child who couldn't hear me. The drive back to my apartment felt different, purposeful, rather than aimless. For the first time in 20 years, I had clarity about what needed to be done. First stop, a hardware store for supplies. The clerk raised an eyebrow at my purchases: chisel, hammer, sandpaper, stone sealer, but said nothing as I paid. The next morning, I returned to the cemetery at dawn, tools in hand. No groundskeeper in sight. Just me and the rows of silent stones. I knelt before Evan's marker and began carefully, reverently chiseling his name into the blank space above the dates. The work was slow, my hands inexperienced but determined. Each letter felt like breathing life back into his memory. EVAN. My son. Not forgotten. Not unnamed. What are you doing? A voice startled me midway through the final. None. The groundskeeper, frowning. Adding my son's name to his grave. I answered simply. You can't just... He began, then stopped. Something in my expression giving him pause. You need permission for modifications. I continued working. I'm his mother. I'm giving myself permission. He watched me for a long moment, then sighed. At least let me help you do it properly. He returned with better tools, showed me how to make the letters even, how to seal them against weather. We worked in companionable silence until Evan's name stood clear and permanent on the once blank stone. Thank you, I said as we finished. The groundskeeper nodded. Got kids myself. Can't imagine. He trailed off. Why wasn't his name here to begin with? His father and I disagreed about the marker. I lied. Protecting Elliot despite everything. I wasn't well enough to fight about it then. And now? Now I remember what matters. Back at my apartment, I found a package leaning against my door. No return address. Inside, a worn teddy bear with a faded blue bow tie, a children's book with dog-eared pages, and a note in Elliot's handwriting. I saved these from the fire. I kept them. Even when I was helping you forget. Perhaps that makes me more of a monster. Or perhaps it means, I always hoped someday you'd be strong enough to remember. I'm sorry, Viv. For everything. I held the bear to my face, inhaling deeply. Beneath the musty scent of storage, a faint trace of little boy smell remained, that magical combination of shampoo, outdoor play, and something uniquely Evan. The book was Goodnight Moon, pages worn from countless readings. Inside the cover, written in my own handwriting. To Evan on your 3rd birthday. I'll read this 1,000,000 times if you ask. Love, Mommy. That night, in Evan's bedroom that I'd kept locked for 20 years, I curled up on his small bed with the bear and book. For the first time since stopping the pills, I didn't dream of fire or smoke or screaming. Instead, I dreamed of reading to a small boy, his head heavy against my shoulder as he drifted to sleep. I dreamed of a voice saying, Again, Mommy. Read it again. When I woke, tears stained my pillow, but they weren't tears of anguish. They felt like healing, like the first real step toward remembering without breaking. On the nightstand, I placed a framed photo of Evan, his name now written clearly on the back. Names have power. Names mean we existed. Names mean we're remembered. Evan, I whispered in the quiet morning light. My son. Not forgotten anymore. Let me be completely transparent with you right now. This video has been watched by nearly 19,000 people, but only half of you have subscribed. I've poured everything into telling Vivienne's story, a story about reclaiming memory, about naming our losses, about the courage it takes to chisel truth back into the blank spaces of our lives. At this point, I have to wonder, what are the rest of you taking from this without giving anything back? This scene at the cemetery where she literally carves her son's name into stone so he won't be forgotten, this is the heart of why I create. If this moment doesn't move you to hit subscribe, to join this community of people who understand the importance of remembering, then maybe nothing will. At the very least, leave a comment explaining why you're holding back. I need to understand what I'm missing. 3 weeks passed in a blur of remembered fragments. I'd wake sometimes with Evan's laughter echoing in my ears, or the phantom sensation of small arms wrapped around my neck. Each recovered memory felt like finding a piece of myself that had been stolen. I'd started seeing Dr. Winters, a trauma specialist who specialized in memory recovery. She didn't promise miracles, just a safe space to reassemble the shattered pieces of my past. The pills suppressed your memories, but they're still there, she'd explained in our first session. Like books locked in a dusty library, we can't get them all back, but we can find the keys to some of them. Today I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by boxes Marshall had dropped off, things his mother had saved from my old life. Photos, birthday cards, Evan's kindergarten artwork. My phone buzzed. A text from Elliot. Can we talk? Please. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since the hospital. Part of me wanted to maintain that distance forever. Another part recognized we'd need closure eventually. Not today. I texted back. I'm busy remembering. The doorbell rang an hour later. I knew it would be him before I looked through the peephole. Elliot stood there, holding a cardboard box, shadows beneath his eyes deeper than ever. 5 minutes, I said without greeting, leaving the door open as I walked back to my living room. He followed, setting the box beside me. I found these at my place. In the storage room. I thought you should have them. I opened it cautiously. Inside, dozens of envelopes, all addressed to Elliot in my handwriting. All unopened. What are these? He sat on the edge of the couch, keeping his distance. Letters you wrote in the hospital. After the fire. Before the medication fully took effect. You never opened them? I couldn't. His voice cracked. At first because I was too focused on your treatment. Later because I was afraid of what they'd say. I picked up the first envelope. Postmarked 3 weeks after the fire. My hands trembled as I broke the 20-year-old seal. Elliot. The doctors say writing might help, but what can words do against this emptiness? I keep waiting for Evan to run into my room, to ask for breakfast, to complain about brushing his teeth. The silence where his voice should be is killing me. They won't let me go to the funeral. They say I'm not stable enough. How can I say goodbye if I can't even be there? How will he know his mama loves him if I can't tell him one last time? Please help me. I need to see where they put him. I need to know he's not alone. Vivienne? I read it aloud. Each word a knife. Elliot stared at the floor, shoulders hunched. I opened another, dated a week later. Elliot. The new pills make everything foggy. I know that's the point. The doctors say it will help with the acute distress phase. Such a clinical term for having your heart ripped out. But something's wrong. I'm starting to forget things. Not just the fire, but everything. Yesterday I couldn't remember what color Evan's eyes were. Today I can't recall if he was afraid of thunder or if that was me as a child. Is this normal? Are the medications supposed to erase him completely? Please tell the doctors to change something. I can't bear the pain, but I can't bear forgetting him either. Vivienne. My voice broke on the final words. I looked up at Elliot, whose face had crumpled. I never read them, he whispered, but I kept them. All these years. Another envelope, another letter. Elliot, I know what you and the doctors are doing now. The pills aren't just for acute distress. They're erasing my memories. Every day I wake up with less of Evan in my mind. Yesterday I found a list I'd made of things to remember. His favorite dinosaur. T-Rex. The way he always wanted 3 bedtime stories. No more, no less. How he could only fall asleep with his blue blanket touching his cheek. But when I read the list, they felt like facts about a stranger. Not memories of my son. What gives you the right to take him from me twice? Stop the medication. Please. I'd rather feel the pain than nothing at all. Vivienne, I set the letter down, anger rising through grief. You kept these letters for 20 years, never read them, but somehow still ignored everything I was begging for? The doctors said, stop hiding behind the doctors. I cut him off. You were my doctor, Elliot. You made the final decisions. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. I was wrong. I've spent 20 years being wrong every single day. And being too cowardly to admit it. At the bottom of the box was something different. A sealed envelope with Elliot's handwriting. To Vivienne. To be opened when you remember. What's this? A letter I wrote 5 years after the fire. When I realized what I'd done couldn't be undone. I've been carrying it ever since, waiting for the day you'd stop taking the pills. I opened it carefully. Dearest Viv, if you're reading this, it means you've remembered Evan. It means the medication has worn off, and the memories have returned. It means you finally know what I've done to you. There's no apology big enough for stealing 20 years of your grief, your healing, your memories of your son. I told myself it was love that made me do it. Love for my sister who was in such pain she couldn't function. But it was fear. Fear that I had caused the fire with my carelessness. Fear that you would never forgive me if you remembered. Fear that I would lose you too. The night of the fire we argued about Seattle. I was angry you were moving across the country with Evan. I knocked over the lamp in my anger. We both saw the spark, but in my hurry to leave to get away from an argument I was losing, I didn't check properly. I just wanted to be gone. Half an hour later, my phone rang. Your house was engulfed. By the time I got there, firefighters were carrying you out. Hysterical. Fighting to go back inside for Evan. They wouldn't let you. It was too late. Every day since, I've asked myself, what if I had stayed? What if I had checked more carefully? What if I had swallowed my pride and helped you pack for Seattle instead of storming out? I couldn't face those questions. So instead, I found a way to make you stop asking them too. The unforgivable truth is that I chose your forgetting over my guilt. I chose chemical peace over real healing. I robbed you of 20 years of processing, of grieving, of remembering the son who deserves to be remembered. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but Evan deserves to be remembered. And you deserve to be the one who remembers him, however painful that is. With eternal regret, Elliot, I finished reading in silence, the weight of his confession settling over both of us. Why did you keep these? I finally asked, gesturing to the box of unread letters. If you never intended to read them, why not destroy them? Elliot's voice was barely audible. Because they were his legacy too, your words about him. I couldn't bear to read them, but I couldn't destroy the only honest grief you were allowed to express. We sat in silence for a long moment, the space between us filled with 2 decades of secrets, guilt, and unprocessed grief. I can't forgive you yet, I said finally. Maybe not ever. I know. But I need to move forward. And that means I need to understand everything. I reached for another letter from the box, and together, we began the painful process of reconstructing the truth, one forgotten memory, one unread letter at a time. 1 year later, I stood in front of a classroom at the Seattle Conservatory of Music. 20 eager faces looked back at me, fingers poised over piano keys. Music is memory, I told them, as I did at the beginning of every semester. It stays with us when words fail, when pictures fade. It's how we remember what matters. They nodded. These students who knew me only as Professor Thorne, the new piano instructor with the intense eyes and occasional distant stare. They didn't know about Evan, or the pills, or the 20 years of forgetting, but I did. I remembered now, not everything, not every day with perfect clarity, but enough. Enough to feel the full shape of my loss. Enough to know who I was before, and who I could be now. After class, I drove to the small house I'd rented near Puget Sound. The Seattle sky wept gentle rain, so different from Boston's harsh winters. On days like this, I'd often think, Evan would have loved puddle jumping here. Inside, I made tea and carried it to my favorite spot, a window seat overlooking the water. The house wasn't large, but it held space for both my present and my past. Evan's bedroom furniture, shipped across the country, now stood in the spare room. Not as a shrine, but as acknowledgement. He had existed. He still existed in me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marshall, landing at 4. Girls excited to see their aunt. After our reunion last year, Marshall had gradually reintroduced me to his family. His daughters, Zoe, 14, and Piper, 10, had welcomed me with a curiosity and warmth that still stunned me. They called me Aunt Vivienne, asked about their half-brother, listened to the fragments of memories I could share. He would have been an amazing big brother. I'd told them once, and meant it. Marshall's wife, Layla, had surprised me most of all. Instead of jealousy or resentment, she'd shown compassion. Your story helped me understand him better, she'd confided during their first visit. The grief he carried alone for so long. On my desk lay the latest letter from Elliot. We communicated mostly by mail, now a deliberate choice. Something about putting words on paper made us both more honest, more careful with each other. Dear Viv, the practice is officially closed. After surrendering my medical license, it seemed the only appropriate step. I've accepted a position at a research ethics board, reviewing psychiatric studies to ensure they meet consent guidelines. Ironic, I know. The support group you suggested has been helpful. Hearing others talk about their guilt, their mistakes, makes mine feel less uniquely monstrous, though no less real. I've been visiting Evan's grave monthly. The groundskeeper mentioned what you did with his name. Thank you for not pressing charges about the medication. I don't deserve your mercy, but I'm grateful for it. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to visit, to see your new life, to meet your students, to witness the woman you've become despite, not because of what I did. With enduring remorse and hope, Elliot, I hadn't responded yet. Forgiveness was a journey I was still navigating, some days closer than others. But the letter would wait. Today was for Marshall's family, for creating new memories while honoring old ones. In the spare room, Evan's room, I straightened the dinosaur figures on the shelf, touched the framed photo of him at the carnival. Your sisters are coming, I told him, a habit I'd stopped trying to break. I think you'd like them. The prescription bottles that had lined my medicine cabinet for 2 decades were gone now, replaced by ordinary things: aspirin, vitamins, allergy medicine. Dr. Winters had helped me through the worst of the withdrawal, the panic attacks, the memory surges that sometimes left me breathless with grief. Healing isn't forgetting, she'd reminded me often. It's remembering without being destroyed by the memory. Some nights I still dreamed of fire and smoke. Some mornings I woke reaching for a son who wasn't there. But those moments no longer defined me. They were part of me, like a scar that marks survival, not just injury. The doorbell rang, Marshall's family arriving early. I opened the door to excited chatter, hugs from the girls, the organized chaos of suitcases and rain jackets. We brought something, Zoe said, holding out a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a hand-painted wooden sign, Evans Cove, with an arrow pointing toward the small beach visible from my window. Dad told us you used to take him to the ocean whenever you could, Piper explained. We thought, maybe we could name a new place for him? Make new memories? Tears filled my eyes, but they were different from the ones I'd shed in that hospital room a year ago. These held gratitude alongside grief, possibility alongside loss. It's perfect, I whispered, hugging them both. Later, we walked down to the small stretch of rocky beach. The rain had paused, leaving the air clean and fresh. Marshall hammered the sign into place while the girls collected shells. I stood at the water's edge, feeling the cold Pacific lap at my shoes. So different from the Atlantic beaches where I'd once held Evan's small hand, a continent away from the life that fire and pills had erased. Yet somehow, standing there watching the sunset paint the water gold, I felt him closer than I had in 20 years. I keep my promises, I whispered to the waves. I remember you now. I'll always remember. That night, surrounded by family I was relearning to love, I dreamed not of fire, but of water. Of a small boy running through waves, laughing as they chased him up the shore. Of his voice calling back to me. Watch, Mommy. Watch me. When I woke, the pain was still there, a companion I'd carry always. But beside it now lived something else, the certainty that remembering, however painful, was always better than forgetting. I was Vivienne Thorne. I had been a pianist, a sister, a patient. I was Vivienne Thorne. I was a teacher, a friend, an aunt. I was Vivienne Thorne. I was, and would always be, Evan's mother. For 20 years, I thought I had been asleep, but I had only been waiting to wake. If you've made it to the end of Vivienne's, the journey witnessed her reclaim her identity, her memories, her capacity to both grieve and live. I have one final request. This video has reached over 24,000 people, yet nearly half remain silent observers, unwilling to join this community through a simple subscription. What's held you back? The fear of feeling too deeply? The discomfort of recognizing your own forgotten pains? The story you just witnessed is about choosing to remember even when forgetting seems easier. About naming our losses instead of burying them. About waking up to our whole truth, not just the parts that don't hurt. If this resonated with you, if any part of you recognized yourself in Vivienne's journey, please subscribe now. Not for the numbers, but because some stories deserve more than passive consumption. They deserve to be honored with engagement, with community, with the courage to say, I was here. I witnessed this. And it mattered to me. If you still can't bring yourself to hit that button, at least have the honesty to tell me why in the comments. Every story deserves at least that much acknowledgement.